Okay, so in this video I want to work on this little piece down here in the corner. I'm just going to add a few different details to it and make an area where we can kind of insert the grip so it's not just sitting here mindlessly disconnected from this piece. So let me turn on screencast key so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so first thing I think I'll do is just go ahead and apply any modifiers we have here. I'm pretty happy with where this is, so I'm going to go over here to the modifiers panel and hit apply all, but need to add the new data user, then we should be able to apply them. Okay, so now all of the geometry in here is locked in just as we wanted to happen. You can see this vertex here is a little bit, close. Might as well just slide that, or you know what, maybe not, because then it kind of overlaps. We'll just leave it, and if it gives us problems later on, we can deal with it then. Okay, one other thing I want to do is go in here and bevel this. So let's press Control B and bevel this, give it a few segments. That looks pretty decent to me. And then I'm just going to kind of find a way to position this grip and scale it so that way it kind of fits up in here. So this might require us to scale down the grip just a bit, so I'm just going to reposition the origin to the geometry, and we can get away with a little bit of scaling of the grip. I just don't want to get too carried away, or else it's going to look unnatural and unrealistic. But something around there should fit fine. Now you can kind of see it's intersecting with this piece, which is exactly what I was going for. And it's not like super close to the trigger, so I think we'll be able to get away with that. Maybe this trigger area is a bit too long, or this is too close for your fingers, so maybe I'll even go back in here. These are just random design ideas I have in mind when I'm making this. I just want to make sure everything makes natural sense in terms of real world, but it doesn't have to be perfect, because once again, this is a sci-fi design, and sci-fi doesn't always equate to realism, but we do want to get it somewhat accurate. Now what I want to do is go into the back here and cut out a little area so that way this piece isn't just intersecting, so we can kind of cut out a hole here to make it look like it's just going into this piece and not just intersecting with it. So I'm going to press Control 3 on the number pad. That'll take us into our left orthographic view here, which is what I'm going for, and then we'll just use we'll use a single vertex, and we're just going to position it over here somewhere. Now let's make sure it's in front of us so we can see it in the view. Yeah, like this. So I'm just going to start extruding this vertex here. We'll extrude up this way, extrude over on the Y, and then extrude down like this. And then I'm just going to bevel these vertices here with Control Shift B to make it more rounded and natural. Now we don't need a super amount of segments there, just a decent amount to make it look rounded. Let's try, because if I go too much it's going to be a big cleanup duty, so I want something that looks smooth but not like it's too many, so maybe 5 segments there will be okay. And then we can just go ahead and select everything with A, fill it in with F, and just pull it back a little bit, and we're just going to extrude all the way through. And then if we shift select this and press Control minus, we're going to have a nice little cut in here. Now you're going to see it's a little bit jagged here in the top. Hard to tell, but it's an easy fix if we just smooth out the cutter. Right click and shade smooth. And then if we need to, we can of course scale this, reset the origin and scale it if necessary, scale it up. Or you can even go into edit mode here and just find a better location for these vertices if you wanted. But I'm pretty happy with how this is positioned. However, I would like to scale it a bit on the X, so that way it kind of terminates around here, just so it's not extending through and just blocking our view. We don't really need a massive cutter, just enough to kind of encapsulate the area we're cutting. And yeah, this looks pretty decent. I'm happy with it. Maybe I could move it up just a tad. And there we go. Now we kind of have an area that the trigger is tucked into. Now the shading's pretty nasty, so we're going to have to go in here and clean it up. So we need to clean this up by first applying the boolean, so that way we actually have access to the geometry in here. Now obviously applying the booleans means we can't revert back and use this and move it around whenever we want. So just in case we want to revert back to this position, I'm going to duplicate this piece as backup so we can always go back to this if we need it. So I'm just going to press Shift D to duplicate, right click to leave it in place, and then the M key will move it to our backup collection that we made earlier in the course. And then at this point we can just apply the boolean and delete out that one. So then if we just simply tab into vertex mode, we can start cleaning up some of the boolean issues here. So you can see a shading issue is caused by this big n-gon right here, so we'll just slide this guy up. Let's see, we have another one very close to each other. Double tap G, slide that up, slide that one, and then same thing to this side. It'll be easy enough to do on our own. Actually, I'm going to do this one instead. Slide that up, and then there we go. And then I'm just going to slide this down a little bit to make it just a tad bit more even. And it looks like most of those issues are fixed. Now, the shading is still not going to be the best, especially once we apply the bevel, so let's go ahead and do that now. So I'm just going to go to Add Modifier, Bevel, Angle Limit Method, give it maybe 3 segments, and let's see what the offset should be. Maybe like right around here. Okay, that looks good, but you can see the shading kind of goes haywire at this point. So we need to do a few different compromises here to see what's going to work best to kind of clean up the solution. So first thing we could probably do, let's see, maybe I could add in some supporting loops by cutting through with this. C, Z, click and enter. Same idea over here. C, Z, click and enter. So it's a little bit better, but now this is pretty much heavily distorted. So we have to figure out a few compromises here. This one might be a little bit difficult to deal with, so let's go ahead and add another knife cut right here, and then same on this side. This is just me messing around with some boolean results, seeing what I can get. And let's see what happens if we were to slide that down. Or maybe slide that over. Well, that's where it was before, wasn't it? Okay, I'm going to leave it here actually, and what I think I'll do is actually create a sort of boundary loop here with the knife tool. I'm going to cut up to about this position. Make sure you press the Z key to cut through. Click and then press enter, and then Blender is going to give us a nice kind of boundary there. So now maybe we could slide that down or join this up, slide that up a little bit, and the shading is still not very happy with us, so we just need to basically do the same thing to the other side. Z key to cut straight through, and on this one we could slide this vertex over a little bit, join these together, and then slide this up a tad. And then all we really have to do is continue this loop around here. And I forgot, once again, the Z key to allow us to cut through. Okay, it's looking a little bit better. I'm happy with the results so far. Now to hold the shading even more, we could add in 2 cuts here. So K key, cut through on that one, cut through on this one, and we could of course symmetrize so we don't have to do the other side, but this side's easy enough to deal with, so I'm just going to do it manually. So something like this, and then you're going to see we have 2 triangles here. We can fill these into a quad by pressing F again, and then let's see, it looks like the auto smooth might not be kicking in at this angle, so let's just increase it a bit. And the shading is pretty good. The last thing we really need to add is a weighted normal to clean up the shading on the planar surface. So once we add that on, the shading should be pretty clean here. Even at the steep angles, I don't really see any sort of shading errors. The only shading errors that are going to occur in this case are going to be on the curved surface, because the weighted normal will take care of any bad shading on planar surfaces. So as long as the curved area is clean, then we are pretty much good to go. And I'm pretty happy with the result. Now, one thing I do want to do is make an additional design on this piece here. And real quick, part of this bevel is not working. Let's try recalculating the normals again. And it looks like that cleaned up everything quite nicely, but it looks like it also adjusted the bevel offset. So let me turn off clamp and just readjust that. And I don't really see any sort of errors, so we're good to go there. Now, my main concern is how generic and plain this side is, so let's add a little bit of a design in the side. So there's a few different ways we could do it. What I think I'm going to do is tab into edit mode here and simply control click that loop of vertices basically. I'm going to press Shift D to duplicate it, right click to leave it in place, and then I'm just going to make this a separate object which we can use as a custom cutter basically. So I'm going to press the P key, separate by selection, and then now we should have this guy right here. So I'm just going to go ahead and right click, set the origin to the geometry, and maybe just scale this down, move it up, kind of like that. And then we can just tab into edit mode and select everything. And let's try an extrusion along the normals. I'm going to press E, right click, and then Alt S. Actually, let's try pressing Shift N first, recalculate the normals, and then try that again. To no avail. Let's just extrude it manually. Just kind of guess around here. And this shading's still crazy, so let's try recalculating the normals again. That fixed it. And then what we could do is just go to vertex snap, snap this vertex to this one, and then snap this vertex along the x-axis to this one. So now I'm basically just going to use this guy as a cutter in the side here. This is a cool little design. So I'm just going to grab it on the y-axis and then just extrude it in a little bit. And by the way, since we duplicated this piece from this one, it shares the same modifiers as this one. So we need to actually go ahead and delete both of those out. We don't need them right now. We'll just kind of pull this in a little bit. Right click to shade smooth. Then we'll shift click this guy and control minus on the number pad. And you're going to see the shading went crazy, and that's simply because the modifier stack needs to be reoriented. We need to move the boolean above the bevel there. There we go. And then finally, all we need to do is clean up the really sharp corners here by just changing the outer miter type to an arc instead. So now it's a little bit smoother and nice looking. And now all we need to do is move this to the cutters collection, and we are good to go. This thing is looking pretty nice. And we'll just do one last thing real quick. This shouldn't take too long. We're gonna go to this one and do the same thing, apply a bevel. So I might as well apply all here. And then let's just recalculate the normals for good measure. And we'll add on our bevel modifier, angle limit method, 3 segments or so to make it more rounded, and then we'll just make it very slight offset. Let's also make sure auto smooth is still turned on, and then just to clean up any sort of shading errors, we can drop on a weighted normal modifier. Okay, this should be good enough, and we can end the video here.